You guys putting out content on a Sunday? Me? Nah, can't do it. Oh, by the way, hello viewers. Me again. Another beautiful day. Hope your five senses work, health and strength is good. Or excellent. Alright. Linus Torvald says Linux 15, 6.15. Very likely next week release RC7. Linus Torvald has announced the availability of Linux 6.15 RC7, hopefully the final version before the final release of Linux 6.15, though the prospect of an 8 release candidate has been left as a possibility. The last week has been quite uneventful, Torvald said, but he did note another run of CPU bugs mitigation that create extra work. Then he says that the situation has been handled pretty well and has been contained this time. So this increases the likelihood that we won't be getting an RC8 aside from the CPU stuff. Torvald highlighted noted fixes for DRM XE graphics, as well as significant patch for schedule extension and extended scheduler. Torvald announcement ends with many fixes and updates to the kernel, suggesting plenty of ongoing activity. Several contributors were also from organizations such as Google and IBM. Both companies rely heavily on Linux, so it's nice to see them funding employees to work on kernel issues. The top contributors this week in terms of numbers of patches submit were Paywen Gupta 11. This is Sue that's 9, and Kent Overstreet. Says here in terms of new hardware support, the NEC Lavia X1475JAS laptop has gained advanced configuration and power interface ACPI, and it says support if I can get this out the way here, proper support for the ADATA XPG Alpha wireless mouse has been added. Better support for Audio Engine D1, Microcodia JP001, and Star 5 JH7110 is included, and there are fixes and improvement for Intel XE and AMD Radeon graphics. Says concluding, Torvald said that unless anything happens over next week, Linux 6.15 will be with us next Sunday. He said that he wishes there weren't so much excitement over the last week, but things look pretty solid now with 6.15 very likely to drop next week. Yeah, alright. So that's one piece of Linux news. We got any comment from the debaters? Zero. Politicians? Nope. Alright, here's the other one. KDE is finally getting a native virtual machine manager called Carton. Says here, if you spend most of your time in Genome, you probably use something like Genome Box to spin up virtual machines without much hassle. We actually gave it a shout out in our list of essential Linux app for newcomers this year. KDE users, however, have often found themselves relying on tools such as Virt Manager or even Genome Box itself. While functional, these don't always feel perfectly at home within the Plasma desktop, and the old Qt Virt Manager and Qt-based alternative has seen its development stall for years. It says now a new virtual machine manager is in the works for KDE Plasma. The project, named Carton, has root dating back to Aaron Rainbolt's original effort to build a QEMU front end using its command line interface. Later, KDE developer Harold Sitter took over and developed it as a Google Summer of Code projects. And it says currently crafting is actively developed by Derek Lin, a University of Waterloo student participating in Google Summer of Code 2025. His primary aim is to deliver a virtual machine manager that truly belongs in the KDE ecosystem. Says here, to feel right at home in KDE, a carton is being built with Qt Quick and Kerigami. It uses the libvirt API to handle virtual machines and could eventually work across different platforms. It says right now development is focused on getting the core part in place. Lin is working on a new domain installer that ditches directvirt dash install call in favor of libosinfo, which help detect OS image and generate the right libvirt XML for setting up virtual machines more precisely. It says he's still refining device configuration and working on a broader hypervisor support. Another key part of the work is building a custom Spice viewer with Qt Quick from scratch. Then it says here, if you're curious, here's the list of specific deliverable Lin included in the GSOC proposal, though he notes the proposal itself is a bit outdated. That means he's probably still working on it. It says here, install and configure virtual machine through libvirt XML format instead of virtual-install CLI. Ability to configure commonly used option in UI. Allow for more fine-tuned control of virtual machine options. Implement a custom Spice viewer to allow users to interact with and view the active virtual machine instead of virt viewer. Says here, virtual machine snapshot to restore / backup previous states. Intuitive UI for displaying virtual machines. Says making a user-friendly, aesthetical, pleasing GUI by addressing community feedback, referencing Mac OS UTM list layout and a preview of the VM, making a UI convert mobile / friendly, retrieving virtual machine status updates using the libvirt API, virt event register LMPL function instead of using the default built-in event loops. And then it says allow it to be integrated with custom Qt event loops, reduce current latency with loading virtual machine list page, adding a browse tool which lets commonly install operating system GPU / memory usage graph as done in Virt Manager, feature to switch between connecting to QEMU hypervisor with session user and system root. And then it says genome boxes seems to only support sessions. Session is in quote. And then it says, however, adding support for system in quotes could be useful for non-KVM / Linux backend like BHYVE and FreeBSD or Hyper-V. For those interested in the timeline, Lin's GSOC proposals say the official GSOC coding started June 2nd, 2025. And then he says the goal is to have a working app ready by midterm evaluation around July 14, 2025, with the final submission due September 1st, 2025. Yeah, and that is that. Yeah, so Linux developers are busy. We got 10 comments from the debaters. Let's see what they got to say on this. See what they got to put on this. What's their take on this? All right, who else we got here? Let's see who we got. Okay, Goodbot said this. This is something I've been hoping for a while now with Plasma, so this is a very exciting. I would donate to the effort, but don't see any way to do that. Right? And then Chug said this, I'll be interested in trying this, though Vert Manager tends to get the job done just fine. Generally, it only needed when you're first setting up the virtual server. After that point, it would just be better to connect to the virtual server with either SSH or RDP. These days, I generally use the virtualization if I need a Windows server, and for Linux I would use LXD. Now Incus is instead, since it's more lightweight than full virtualization. Alright, who else is this? Leon said this. He's responding to he said this, I did love to see some examples of those issues because I don't see them. Do you have any links to some pictures? And then Chug said this, I have been using KDE Plasma for years and it's excellent. I love how customizable everything is. You can take the file manager, Dolphin, and customize it so that the menu bar has a full useful button in a useful layout. You can take console is spelled out K-O-N-S-O-L-E, and give it a minimalist interface with just tabs. And most importantly, KDE Plasma is the only desktop interface that includes wobbly Windows native. It says KDE gives you the freedom to make the interface work how you want it to work. Then it says, whereas GNOME tries to make you work in specific. Then he says in parentheses, and unconventional, and in close parentheses, ways that they intend. And then who was this? Far said this. So I am a member of the Fedora KDE SIG, and even I can say GNOME is great. DE, he says, heck, I sometimes get itch for installing it in a virtual machine, but I couldn't leave it with a K runner and KDE as a whole anymore. He says, Carton will make for an awesome VM management software once it's released. Yeah, these guys are sharing what they like and they don't dislike, what they like and what they would love to see. And then Wings said this. He's responding to Leon. He said, despite customization, something seems off with KDE Plasma. The padding seems to vary in different areas, and those ugly white outlines surrounding darker backgrounds look out of place. Overall, it looks amateurish. GNOME and Cinnamon are miles ahead in terms of looks. And then Leon comes back and he says, it happened to me. I think he's responding to. He said, it happened to be more mainstream. I think people know it better. That's all. But when you get a look at KDE, man, the world opens. GNOME now seems so limited and simple. Maybe I'm so excited because it's the new shiny thing, IDK. Anyway, and then David said this, GNOME user like me have a cult-like devotion to DE. I just love how simple it looks. And who is this? This is Dramal said this. Never understood GNOME users. Seems so cumbersome. And then Leon here, he says, I'd have to say that I just tried the KDE DE 2 weeks ago. Since a long time, I am talking years, and I was really surprised by the looks of it and the customization option. He means that he wasn't keeping up with it. He said, being a GNOME and Cinnamon user, most of the time KDE seems like a fresh breath of air to me. It looks really good, and GNOME should be ashamed of how much KDE can be easily customized. meaning that Genome didn't keep up with the customization efforts like our KDE does. It says here, with the stock utilities, I'm seriously considering distro hopping from Linux. He says, I'm seriously considering distro hopping from Linux Mint, Cinnamon, to Kubuntu 25.4. I'm guilty of it too. I use different Linux distros, so yeah, I distro hop all over the place because of the variety. But anyway, says here, he says, I'm seriously considering distro hopping from Linux Mint, Cinnamon, to Kubuntu 25.4 or KDE Neon for a while. Yes, it looks that great to me. Well, that's the end of that. That's all the article. That's all the both articles in the comments. But look, in order to keep your user base, you got to stay on top of your OS by, improving the infrastructure and keeping your user base inclined. So yeah. Now, when it comes to that distro hopping thing, I've done it. So I hold my hand up. I've done it. So yeah, I went from Slackware to Debian to Fedora. I jumped from that to from Ubuntu, Linux Mint, and now XFCE. So I'm guilty of that. But yeah, these guys are sharing their inputs and insights, what they like about it, what they like, probably what they like to see to improve and stuff like that. But yeah, but I mean, people Windows hop too. I'm just saying, they do Windows hop. So yeah, Mac users do the same thing too. They're guilty. They're not exempt from that statement. So yeah, but other than that, man, Linux getting better, man, and the way you keep your operating system up to date, it's like listening to the users, on what they want, and you can't be stagnant with these operating systems. You got to keep them, the infrastructures up to date and intact, so yeah, and keep things moving. That's the name of the game, man. With all these with these operating system. I mean, Linux got a whole bunch of them, but every operating system, that every distro that Linux has, developers know they got to stay on top of it, so yeah. And by the looks of it, KDE is getting better now. Now, according to who is this? Who is this? Who is this? Genome and Cinnamon. The developers, they got to keep those up to date. They want to keep that user base. So yeah, once you come out with a Linux distro, you can't sit back with your hands in your pocket. You got to keep your OS up to date, because your OS have a user base. So got to keep following through on it. Working on it every day. Yeah, and then listening to the feedbacks that your users are sending to you. But yeah, so KDE is getting better, man. Anyway, I'm gonna leave this video for y'all to enjoy them. Nice talking to you people again. Crystal, Star Wars, Dark Side, Go. Peace.